Hi, Jason.
Hey, Toby, how's it going?
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me, Toby?
Yes, I can. Great.
Perfect, awesome. So I guess you want me to start off now, or should we wait till everyone's in their breakout rooms?
I guess we can start.
Awesome. So thanks everyone for joining breakout room today with myself. As mentioned, I think I'm going to really focus my presentation on around how to better leverage your outside of Canada experience to break into the market here in the technology space. So I'll just go over some few introductions about myself, then about who Itiq is and how you can leverage them as you make that transition, as well as I'll highlight some of the key things that are going on in the Canadian technology market, and then some things that could help differentiate yourself when you're applying for those new jobs. My video seems to be freezing a lot. So my name is Jason Hamilton. I've been working with Itiq for about 3 years now. What we do is we specialize in IT staffing. So that means anything that touches the technology project we kind of work on. A little bit about myself. So I've come from a background of retail for about a decade, went back to school, studied some business marketing to get myself, transition my career, and then ended up in staffing, specifically in IT. I found a very big passion around the development space. It's always changing, always something new to learn. And we could all realize how we're becoming very technology agnostic as a society. So I thought it was a really cool space to go into. And since then, I've been doing these types of presentations to kind of share my knowledge so that other people can leverage it as they continue their careers. So quick agenda for today. I'll talk about Itiq in a bit more detail, about how we can help, the Canada technology overview, some key technology skills in high demand, as well as a brief Q&A session midpoint so you can ask questions around those first 4 points. Afterwards, we'll go into some resume tips, extra information that might be helpful for you, some in-person and virtual tips, LinkedIn tips, as well as a last Q&A session. So let's jump right into it. So about Itiq Tech Recruiters, as mentioned, we're an IT company that focuses on IT recruitment. We're nationally right now. We've got 3 main offices, one in Vancouver, one in Calgary, and one in Toronto. In 2022, we look to expand to the US. In places like Houston, New York, and Chicago. So we're looking to grow nationally in North America. What we do and what makes us a little bit different is our recruiters are specialized in IT. So I'm sure you've probably all worked with an agency before where the person is more of a generalist. What we decided to do was really focus our recruitment team. So really put them where they're passionate about in the IT space. So we've got a development team. We've got 2 different groups, one that focuses on open source and one on proprietary. We've got a PMO group, that's project management office, an infrastructure group of recruiters that manages on network systems types roles, and then we got a data and business intelligence group. One of the big things and one of our key values at Itiq is we really like to help smart people find one another. So that means if we can do an introduction here and there, even if it doesn't turn into anything for us, we definitely do that. I think, helping other individuals, just like Jane said, and using your network earlier is really important in leveraging and helping people grow. So how Itiq can help you through your transition. What we do is some one-on-one sessions we schedule a one-on-one session with a recruitment specialist who will support in the following areas. So one is knowing your skill set and your career aspirations. That way we can really bring opportunities to you that, align to where you want to go. One other thing we do is we provide testing services. So we use a tool called IKM assessment. So we can test you on a technical level if it comes to any development frameworks. If you're in the product space, we can test that. DevOps, UX, UI, anything in the infrastructure system space, we can test that. So that way we can showcase that with your profile and we share that with you. So that way you can show clients what your skill set is before you even start the interview process. We do a lot of resume reviews, so we'll help you revamp your resume so that way you could really sell your profile for the opportunity you're really passionate about. We do some interview preparation to support any individuals to market themselves. So if you're moving into one of those interviews that you're really hoping you can get, we can sit down with you for a 5 to 10 minute call and really get those butterflies out of you, so really make sure you're prepared. Now we'll move into the Canada technology overview. So one of the key things I wanted to do is there's tons of opportunity in various IT categories. Unfortunately, with the pandemic in the last couple of years, I think a lot of organizations have realized they needed to become tech agnostic, really have the tools in place so people can grow and continue working. So we've seen over 500 active opportunities every given week in the technology space across the country, which is crazy in my opinion. One of the busiest markets I've seen in 6 years of being in the industry. So those areas and categories include development, technology support, project management, business analysts, and a lot of data-centric roles, just to name a few. You know, there's a very, like I said, growing demand for development and data-centric roles across all of the industries. You know, lots of groups out there are available to help support your transition into technology. So, you know, you're all here today with BNet. That's one group alone. But if you're like, I'll name a few here in Calgary that we work with. There's Bow Valley College, SAIT, NATE, Itiq College, tons of various meetup groups that, you know, really focus around what their specialization is. So there's data groups, development groups, agile focus groups, cloud groups, and everyone in these groups like to network and help other people reach their goals. And one really cool thing in Canada is there's a very big increase in remote opportunities. A lot of organizations have realized that, you know, we have the tools in place so people can continue working, and you don't need to be in the office to be successful. So now, just with that increase is, you know, you can live anywhere you want. So I started placing people that live in the Yukon, the East Coast, and they're all supporting clients here in Calgary, BC, the US. The sky's the limit now. So it just gives you more of that flexibility and work-life balance. I really want to highlight, you know, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of development focused roles now, and that's one of the biggest areas that, you know, is lacking skill set in Canada from my experience over the last couple of years. So, you know, just to share with everyone here on the call, some of those high in demand skills are, you know, Node.js, React.js, Angular, Java, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Ruby on Rails, you know, Vue.js, a lot of API development, BI reporting, cloud enablement, skill set, SQL query and scalability around the data space. I didn't mention it here on this page, but lots of .NET roles, so ASP.NET, MVC, the list goes on. So if you're passionate about development, there's a big opportunity for you to, you know, upscale your skill in that area. And a lot of clients are looking for those junior resources that they can mold and, you know, either have internship programs, et cetera. Some other key skills that we've noticed, you know, we mentioned DevOps engineers and specialists, lots of architects. So that'll be solution architects, you know, data architects, enterprise architects. The list goes on for the type of architects there. You know, big push on cybersecurity. You know, data engineers and data scientists. Again, the data-centric roles are really pushing. Everyone has realized that they can use the data to make proper business decisions. Technical leads to lead all these groups. Product owners, managers, UX, UI, and graphic designers, and a lot of technical support because everyone's working remotely now. You know, the call centers are a little bit more busy than usual. Just people need help logging in, can't get onto their, you know, their personal network, and vice versa. So next, I'll just kind of give you guys some a little bit of time to ask me some questions. So does anyone have some questions?
Just want to mention that you can put your questions in the chat, or you can even unmute and ask your questions since this is a smaller group. Any questions yet? Maybe whilst we're waiting for questions, Jason, what's your experience with people who are looking for remote opportunities, and what are the complications that come with that?
So some clients, like I know that, you know, if you're overseas, that's one of the biggest complications is having the time difference and the ability to be able to do business in different countries for some clients. I find if you're within Canada, as long as you're flexible to work the specific time zone that that client needs, you're good to go in that aspect. So there's not a lot of constraints when it comes to that. You just need to have the proper, system set up in terms of connectivity, have your own tools in place, like a proper desktop, multiple monitors, and that. I think that's probably the biggest challenge is when people are starting to work remotely, they don't realize how much effort they have to put in their home work office, because you can't just do everything off one laptop and a small screen. I've got three open right now. I've got us on one screen, I got the presentation on the other, and then I got my notes on another, right? So I think that's the biggest challenge is people don't realize that how much effort there is to set up a home office. But a lot of these organizations that are looking for permanent employees and not contracts are actually starting to implement an allowance to allow individuals to set up that home office. I know that one of the clients here that my wife actually works for is ATB Financial. I know that they had that program in there to kind of save some office space. They gave their individuals an allowance to start that, so you can get a stand-up desk or a proper chair to make sure you have the right tools in place. But that's the biggest challenge. I think if you're open and you're flexible, the sky's the limit, to be honest.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jason. We do have a couple of questions. Zubey is asking for what's the process and the first steps if you are looking for this kind of opportunities, and what is the likely cost implications?
So the process is to really just, I think, making sure you have everything in place. If you're moving to Canada, for instance, to be able to show the client that you have your work visa or your residence kind of set up and you have that process. I know with some PRs you need to have it and a job locked in before you get proper the stamp of approval. So I think being transparent around what your timelines are, because that will come up. A lot of clients now, again, the skill set and the market is really tight and very competitive. So if you have a skill they want, most clients will work with you to get there. So, and in types of like cost implementations, I think it's hard to say. It depends on the role that you're going for, right? If you're a developer, there's going to be a lot more costs associated because you need to have, a proper full setup to be able to do some coding. Whereas if you're more on the product side or a project manager, a little bit less of a cost because you just need maybe 2 screens, be able to have the right tools. And most organizations will like share the licenses you need to be able to do your work. So you won't need to get a license for Zoom or Microsoft Teams or, GCP like with Google. All that's provided. So it all depends. I think the development space and the more technical roles, there'll be more cost associated to it. But I think if you're more on the PM side, you're probably a little bit more safe. Network infrastructure is kind of in the middle. Depends on where you're going to be playing. Like if you're doing more of the hardware and the networking side of things, there might be a bit more cost because you need to have those things within your environment. But it all depends. But again, lots of programs out there, lots of places are going to have deals right now, especially this time of year. If you're looking to save some money, Christmas, Boxing Day is good. I do know like around, I'm a big sports fan, and unfortunately during Super Bowl is actually a really good time to buy some IT and some technology program like tools. Lots of sales around there. It's actually it's the time you can save the most when it comes to buying technology items, like laptops, TVs, any hardware that you need. It's one of those unknown facts that I realized over the last couple of years talking to people that work at the Best Buys and Future Shops and that.
Thanks, Jason. Just one more question before you move forward. So Uche is asking about having interest in technology policy, operating activities, and looking at what, this sounds vague to him, but is looking at what opportunities exist in that area. So things around policy that's got to do with technology.
I haven't seen very many of those types of roles, to be honest, because I think most development teams are built that they have those policies and regulations put in place. Like there's certain processes and best practices you need to follow. So that's kind of that area. If you're going more to like ERP with like SAP and like Microsoft Dynamics and stuff like that, those are already kind of set in place with those organizations, right? Because those are custom off the shelf like tools you can buy. I have seen there has been, like, depending on like if you're going more government, there's some, regulation and policy type roles. I think there's like a policy analyst and stuff like that that you can see. So it all depends on where you want to go. But I think for the most part, if you're looking at development on its own, that's just following best practices. And then I guess you're paired up with, like, you always have a cybersecurity or like a security analyst built into your team that'll focus on that. So, if you're looking at regulations and like policies and that, probably security might be the area you want to go into, because that'll be kind of focused more there. But when it comes to development, you usually have those core team members around you that are going to take care of that, and they just want you to focus on development. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. We have 2 more questions. Are you able to take that before?
Oh yeah, for sure. I love questions. Okay. Yeah, my slides are very short, and so I think I built them short so that way we could have more dialogue and questions. I like more questions, to be honest.
Absolutely. So there's a question from Bolariwa, who's moving to Saskatchewan this August next year, actually, and has got a background in SAP ERP with certifications in CBAP. And asking to know what are the opportunities and how easy is it to land the job before arriving in Canada?
Again, like I mentioned earlier, is making sure that you highlight that you have a timeline in place. It depends on where you're focused on in SAP, because there's specific modules that I know it's a little bit more of a niche environment. Like I know if you have Microsoft Dynamics, if you're more focused around ABAP, SAP HANA, more of the data focused modules, you're going to be a very high in demand. But I think if you're certified with SAP, it's not going to be difficult. You're probably going to look more for enterprise level organizations, because those are the ones that those big SAP kind of focuses on, is, your big enterprise level. If you're looking to join more of a small to medium, there won't be as much opportunity. But again, it's just really highlighting your profile properly. And I'll go through that in my next couple slides of how you can leverage, you have those certifications, how we can leverage that and make sure that it stands out on your profile, because I find the way you structure your resume is really important. And I've spoken with lots of HR directors, talent acquisition individuals, and that first page is where you grab their attention. And I'm going to highlight that in my second part of the presentation of how you can leverage everything there. But as long as you have that process set up in place, your timelines are done, you've got your paperwork set up so where you can come and work here legally, companies are flexible. So I think what you should do though is do research before you land, find out which, province has most opportunity for what your skill set is. So, if you're looking more enterprise level, like the GTA, we'll have a lot of, enterprise level banks and companies globally that work out of there. Calgary is becoming a very big tech hub. Vancouver, I've seen a lot of technology out in Winnipeg as well. It's a little bit cold there, so be prepared. Just do a little research before you decide to pick a location, I think is important. So.
Yeah, one more question before we move forward. So Oluyemi is asking about what is called common coding languages. So these are like nice to have languages for people without coding experience who have to work with DevOps or Scrum teams.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is having a strong fundamental on front-end frameworks. So, having JavaScript, HTML, CSS, those will be your core, like your meat and potatoes to start off in development, is really focusing on that front end, and then learning a framework such as React, Angular, Vue. Once you become an expert with one of those, you can learn all three pretty quickly from my understanding. I'm not a developer, I just know how they all tie together. But making sure you have a strong fundamental on the front end, I think, is key if you're becoming a developer. If you're going more data focused roles, becoming familiar with Python and R is really important, because, if you decide to go the data engineer or data analyst, data scientist route, you're going to need that. But a lot of programs out there, and there's a lot of free tools to learn, those languages. Udemy is a really good one that you can go on that I've seen a lot of developers use. But yeah, I think if you're going common coding, front end is key. And then you could expand from there, because then you'll know, if you're passionate more around the front end is more design. If you want to go more data, you'll go more back end. And then you'll see a lot of organizations having a full stack role. I don't believe that that's a real thing. in my opinion. It's really hard to find a really strong full stack developer that's an expert in front end, back end, and mid. Typically, you find a full stack developer that's really passionate on the back end or the front end that has a strong understanding of the other. But yeah, again, front end is key. If you're working in if you want to work with DevOps or Scrum Masters, Agile, become Agile certified, really know that methodology is really key. A lot of organizations aren't fully Agile. They're kind of a mix of Agile waterfall, but that's a big push I see across like the country is everyone's doing digital transformation and focusing on becoming very, very Agile focused and doing sprints and scrums. So, if you want to get Agile certified, there's tons out there. And the biggest one I see that clients really go with is SAFe. That's the big one that I've seen everyone using. I think it's almost about 60% from the last time I saw that is the most sought after certification for Agile.
Great, thank you, Jason. I think we can go on.
Awesome. So next step. So resume tips. As I mentioned earlier, it's all how you structure your first page is the most important when it comes to selling yourself when you're, breaking into the market and technology. So one of the ones that I've had lots of HR and, departments share with me is really quantify your experience on your resume. I think the more you draw that out is the better. So really have numbers out there. So like one of the examples I have here that I put in is, you improve their invoicing process by 25%, which saved the organization $200,000 over the following 12 months. So now the client or the individual that's reviewing your resume can really see what your value was on that project. So that's just one of the examples you could, I usually go numbers is key. You can't hide behind numbers, right? So again, sharing your personal projects that highlight the role you're applying for. So if you're breaking into the development market and you're more on the junior side, share those personal projects, share your GitHub link, the research project you might have completed while you're doing your education, any of the links to certifications. I think that's really important. You're showcasing that, you might not be a really senior resource in that environment, but you have the passion and you're willing to learn. I think that's one of the biggest things now with, organizations is culture. Culture comes up a lot. And one of them, especially when it comes to technical resources, is individuals that are willing to learn and, pick up new tools, not just to be stagnant with where they're at. And with, like I said earlier, reason I love technology is it changes almost every day. There's something new coming up. There's a new framework, new language, new tool for us to use to kind of simplify our life and make things easier. So making sure that's highlighted at the top is really important as well. A project-based resume. I've seen some resumes where you just list the 5 places you work and there's no context. Again, if you're not drawing that picture for and like showcasing what you did, they're just going to move on, right? You need to really grab their attention. And one of those things is, a project-based resume. And that's something Itiq really big on is revamping resumes when we meet with candidates, like, provide context to the timelines of the projects, the deliverables, the business drivers, what you contributed to the project, project team size. Like if you were working on a really cross-functional team with Scrum Masters, UX designers, development team, you were sitting with the leadership table, highlight that skill set and like that's experience that not everyone has, right? Because, I've sit with my leadership team and it's a way different conversation than if I was sitting with someone that's a junior recruiter. So, highlight that in your resume. Get to the experience or your professional summary section of the resume on the first page. Sell yourself right away. If you don't grab their attention on that first page, you've lost already. And I'm going to go through this in a little bit more of like what that looks like, a professional summary. I'll share the one that I have on my LinkedIn and that I have at the top of my resume as well. And I'll share, an example of project-based resume. So, here's an example of that project-based resume. So you can really see how they wrote the project, what they did, when they were working there, what their role was. They're a project manager. They were, client-facing PM, leading the enterprise-wide deployment of Windows 10. Then they went through their responsibilities, what they were doing. Next project, they highlighted it again. what their role was, what they were doing specifically, and what their responsibilities were. So the more context you give, the better, in my opinion. I know you still want to keep your resume not like 30, 40 pages, but I find at least go for the last 5 years of experience and beef it up as much. Like most resumes I work with are anywhere from 3 to 5 pages. But again, you want to grab their attention on that first page, and then you want to fill that context and give all the meat and potato, but you want to draw them down to that. So next is just some extra information. I mentioned personal projects is really important. What you do on the side is good. Certifications and achievements, portfolio and GitHub links. Next, I kind of like interview tips. I think these are going to be important for you to know. I'm still learning as I go. I'm not the greatest interviewer. You would think if I do public speaking, I'd be good in an interview setting, but I'm not perfect. One other thing though, you really want to do, it seems, very simple, but is definitely review the company website and your resume prior to the interview. The reason I say that is a lot of first interviews, the first question they're going to ask you is, what do you know about our company? If you can't explain what their company does or anything about the organization, you're already lost. Like, to be honest, I've had hiring managers say that within that first 5 minutes is how you really impress them. So knowing about the organization is key. Reviewing the hiring manager's LinkedIn profile or the person that's interviewing in to get a better understanding of their personal history. We all see who looks you up on LinkedIn. That's a function with the LinkedIn tool. So if you know who that person is you're meeting with, look them up beforehand. They'll look you up. It just makes it for an easier dialogue back and forth, because you might have similar interests that you can kind of bring up in the conversation. Be prepared to answer non-technical behavioral type questions. So an example is just like, how would your colleagues describe you, or what is an area of weakness you feel you need to improve on? Showing weakness.
Sorry to interrupt, Jason. I think we have just less than like 20 seconds to go, but I just want everyone to know we do have a panel session right after this where Jason is also going to be speaking. So if you have any more questions, just bring it there, and Jason will speak to some of those things as well.
Yeah, exactly. So always have questions prepared.